An unnamed hospital in England has admitted a woman may have been raped by a transgender patient after denying the possibility of an attack for almost a year, the House of Lords has heard. When police were called after it was reported, they were allegedly told by staff that there was no male on the single-sex ward, therefore the rape, quote, could not have happened. But almost 12 months later, it emerged that one of the patients at the time was transgender, and the details of the case were shared by Baroness Nicholson of Winterbourne during a debate on single-sex wards, and she joins me here in the studio now. Baroness Nicholson, thank you so much. Lovely to see you. Now, this has caused quite a stir. You've raised this issue. I think it surprised a lot of people to hear that there is this problem within the NHS. Do you think there is a problem that it has been ideologically captured in some way?
I don't think it's anything to do with ideology. Well, it may be, of course, in the beginning, but in fact, the NHS got two conflicting sets of instructions out to wards. On the one, it says that every patient should have single-sex wards, should be housed with their own sex. This is an argument that's been going on since I was in the House of Commons, which is about 1 million years ago, and actually it all came through. And by 2008, 92% of all wards were single-sex.
Yes.
And it says in the instructions, of course, if you want to be, for example, an old couple with one dying, it might be a husband and a wife, then they sleep together, as it were.
Yes.
But basically, it's been the whole aim of the House of Commons, and a bit more the House of Lords, that single-sex wards should be the norm. 92% of the wards were reported in 2008 as being genuinely single-sex. And then in 2010, the whole thing flipped.
Because, of course, when you are in hospital, you're at your lowest ebb. You are particularly vulnerable, just not in terms of your illness, but in terms of you're somewhere that's alien to you, you don't know the people around you. It is very important, isn't it, for women to have the comfort of knowing they're around their own sex? Women
and men and children. It's patient safety, patient dignity and patient privacy.
Yes.
So that's the right of all of us. And somehow, inside the NHS, this has been grossly interfered with and has been turned upside down without our knowledge. Now, I'm a parliamentarian, so my feeling of deep grievance is not just for the people themselves, but it's the fact that they sidelined Parliament, because we'd spent 30 years arguing this through and got it, and it was almost 100% by the time we finished. 2010, it was flipped, and the NHS, behind our backs, didn't come back to Parliament, didn't say, well, you've been discussing this for 30 years, and we now want to have a change. We think that people who are transgender should take over and should have priority. They didn't come and tell us that. It was slipped in. Really, as a parliamentarian, that's why I'm so annoyed.
Well, I think that's the reason why people are so angry, is because, you know, the document I saw from 2010, which was an official NHS document, talked about how they would talk about single-sex accommodation to the public, but what they meant was gender, but they wouldn't say that explicitly. So this is something that is very much underhand, I think.
It's worse than underhand. It's ruined the staffing, you see, because the first thing I knew about this was when two nurses came to see me in about 2018 or 19 and said, we've lost our jobs, please can you help? I said, I don't believe it. What do you mean you've lost your jobs? And then two teachers were with them and said, we've lost ours as well. Why? I don't understand. I said, I don't have a constituency. I'm just in the House of Lords now. But I was a European Member of Parliament, so they came to see me. Well, we've lost our jobs because we refuse to agree that a trans woman is a woman or a trans man is a man. In other words, these are classes, our courses, all our exams and everything. We're being asked to go right against the science. We can't. We've refused and we've lost our jobs.
Is it not the case, though, that surely of all institutions, the NHS needs to have an acknowledgement of biological reality? They need to understand the differences between men and women. I've even seen NHS documents talking about how sex is assigned at birth, when, of course, it is observed and recorded at birth. You would think medical practitioners would know this.
Well, that's exactly what the medical practitioners told me, and that's why they couldn't stay in the NHS. They lost their jobs because of it. They didn't walk out, but they were told, no, in that case, you can't be here. It's utterly appalling. But worse than that, you see, think what it's done to the staff to have to say to a woman, and I've got about a dozen now ladies, and they've all said there's a man in the ward, and they've been told, and that's the instruction of hospital trusts, ranging from Lincolnshire up to the north, right down to the south in Somerset, they're instructing the staff to tell an absolute blatant fib, that there isn't a man in the ward. But the problem is, as I've said to them, your argument is based on something you haven't yet proved, which is the NHS can actually change your sex. So far, nobody's demonstrated that to me.
Yes. So let's be clear about this. So this Annex B policy?
Well, it started in 2010.
Right.
It was a much lighter document. It's actually, I think it's Annex D at that moment. I've got both on my iPhone for you to look at. But actually then, in about 2015, something changed. A big report came out a couple of years later, the Denton's report, and this was publicised and promoted and paid for by two vastly, vastly expensive American institutions, and it said we will aim to get transgender the same as gender throughout the globe. And a number of countries have fallen like dominoes, bong, 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 bong. Dear old Britain is a bit pig-headed, and we're not giving way to this inaccuracy. And on top of that, France has now come in. Darling old France across the channel has suddenly woke up. They're appalled by this, and bless them, the Swedes have now emerged, saying puberty blockers, which is what makes these children unable to conceive, unable to bear children. You know, they lose half their life in that sense. The Swedes have now come in, so we're fighting back. And funnily enough, in the report, it does say the most difficult country to convert in all of this will be the UK, because it's pig-headed. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yes,
it
absolutely.
also says because of all the incredible difficulty of the UK's public publicities, the machines, the televisions, the radios and the newspapers, they will be in the way. They'll be a nuisance.
Well,
so please go on being a nuisance.
No, absolutely.
And I can tell you what, we parliamentarians can be a nuisance as well.
Yes. Well, I mean, as you absolutely should be. I mean, the problem with all of this, and this Annex B policy, which, as I understand it, so if a female complains and says there's a male on my ward, they say, no, there is not. And they just, they absolutely... And now, has that come from various NHS trusts then? That's not from the top. That's not from the Department of Health.
It's the top.
Oh, it is from the top.
Annex B is from the top, and it's been filtered down through the NHS trusts, who've rather foolishly, I think, rather like sheep who all gone astray, or like lemmings going over the cliff.
Yes.
They've all copied it, and then they've issued instructions to the hospitals saying this is what you do.
Who is responsible then? Is this because of Stonewall giving advice, or is it because of the Department of Health that just decided to get on board with this? Do we know where this originated from?
Well, I can tell you that there is a review. Actually, there are 3 reviews going on. There's a review that has been announced by the Minister going on, and that is a very, very odd review indeed. The government has a set of rules and regulations for reviews that came out in 2018, and it says you've got to have independent people who mustn't have skin in the game, as it were.
I see.
And the couple of people who are doing the review not only have skin in the game, they actually are the game.
Right.
I mean, I like them. They're very intelligent, but I don't think they should be doing this at all.
Yes.
And so I've complained about that. I found another review that's going on, and then there's a third review that's going on. So at last we're causing problems.
Yes.
I'm delighted.
So in addition to parliamentarians and the media, raising awareness of these issues, what can staff members do? Because I'm sure, you mentioned the nurses who lost their jobs for raising concerns. I'm sure there are a lot of other people who would like to raise concerns, but they're fearful. That if they do...
Yes, but I'm not raising awareness. I'm trying to punch it in the chin, get rid of it. I want that to go, because we can't have the NHS being led down a terrible trail of telling lies to patients.
Yes.
So there I was outside my little door banging saucepans last year or the year before, and at the same time reading up, because we were under lockdown, it was the time to do it, reading up all the data on this and being briefed by people who are deeply unhappy. This is a traumatic thing for the NHS to do. We cannot allow it to go on. And
it is being reviewed, am I right? So and it should be by April, I believe, the new...
Well, there are 3 different reviews, so you pay your money and you get your choice.
Yes.
And I've already been told by one of the reviewers that actually it's a predetermined thing in any case and he's not going to have any changes. So he may have another thing coming. I'm giving more coffee next week.
Right, so there's going to be a fight.
We're going to get rid of it.
Fantastic. Well, Baroness Nicholson, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, fingers crossed.